All right, all right. I think we are live and ready to go with Scott Orris. Welcome to Legend Sports, the improvised version of. All right, so the improvised version of Legend Sports and Amplify. You know, you do what you got to do, right? The show must go on, and I'm here with filmmaker Scott Orris. How are you, man?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
This will be fun. Sorry, it's so haphazard, but
I'll
you
roll with
know,
it. I'm an indie filmmaker. I roll with what happens, you know.
right. I mean, you know, sometimes things get a little bit off, and you just kind of have to wing it and do what you got to do, right?
You certainly do. No,
So I am sending out something here on Twitter so that we know that we are out there, and hopefully somebody tunes in now. Like we were talking before we got on here, that this is kind of something that people catch when they can, almost like a podcast, these types of things. And I've discovered that more views come as time goes by, right? But everybody's got busy days and busy times, and sometimes you can't always get in with when something is live, so you catch it later. That's the beauty of YouTube and all these others. All right, so I think I've got that sent out, and we are live. So appreciate your time, sir. This is going to be, I think, a lot of fun. And like I said, I appreciate your patience. It was great talking to you before we got started. I did kind of a dry run on some old board games. You said you were into board games before we started, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, love board games.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe you know, when you move, sometimes things go awry. And you know, yesterday with the movers, and then AT&T couldn't make it to get the Wi-Fi set up, and then this morning I couldn't even use the hotspot on my phone, which is kind of annoying. But although they responded back, I tweeted out, and I just kind of pinged AT&T to tell them what happened. Within like a minute, somebody from their customer service said, "DM us, please." Probably trying to head off any peeved customers, right? But yeah, so I'm in digging in these boxes, and man, I was finding board games that I didn't even know I had. So yeah, it should be fun.
Be fun. Whenever you're digging through your old stuff,
right?
Oh, I love doing it.
But we are here to talk about you and your work and your projects, and like I said, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, especially the improvised version that we're doing here. So
I appreciate
tell us. I know we're going to get into your past work and what your current project is, the Rap Dixon Beyond Baseball. But you know, I mentioned to you that Professor James Brunson, brilliant man, brilliant books he's written. But that term he used, origin story, I love. And I love to hear how people got into it. And I mentioned to you why. I'm hoping that people see what they're doing, and they understand that, you know what, there are people out there that really like what you're doing, and will appreciate what you're doing. And they like to know how you got there, because maybe there's some things that they want to do. So tell us a little bit about you and how you got to where you're at today.
Well, it's a long story, but I'll condense it.
That's okay. Take your time.
But you know, growing up, I always liked history. I mean, I was always interested in anything historical, going to it, whether it was going to Gettysburg or going to Philadelphia or going to, you know, anything historical. So I was always interested in that. And I learned later that it was kind of the images of history that I was the most drawn to. And, you know, documentary has always kind of spoken to me in that way. So growing up watching the Ken Burns baseball series, I mean, I was such a captive. It got me. I say it really grabbed me. And I was like, wow, like, that's where it really came alive for me, I think. You know, it was And I love reading history books and all of that, but it's like for some reason the visual aspect of it is kind of what always spoke to me.
Mhm.
And so I've always been into like old movies, old pop culture and stuff in general, and sports is part of a large part of pop culture
It
from the
is. Yeah.
past and in pop culture today. And I mean, when you go back to the 20s, and it's like you think of the historical figures in popular culture, you think of like Charles Lindbergh, you think of Babe Ruth. I mean, it's like
Mhm.
right there with Rudolph Valentino and Clara Bow or something, so it's like they're
Right.
they're right there. And so to me it all goes, so I love history, and the history of sports is very fascinating to me. It always has been. And so I was in a documentary class. I originally had a degree in history from Messiah College. Now it's Messiah University. They're now updated to university status. But I went back as an older student for film, and I was in a documentary class, and School for Public Humanities came to us and they're like, "Hey, like, would you be interested in making a movie about this Negro League baseball team called the Harrisburg Giants? I know a Negro League player, or played for the team. It was Jim Whedon." And I was like, "Whoa, what?" Like because I had grown up watching the Ken Burns series and knowing about the Negro Leagues, and knowing about Josh Gibson, Satchel Paige, Cool Papa Bell, and finding that extremely fascinating. Buck O'Neill, of course, is like the most captivating part, in my opinion, of the Ken Burns baseball series. I absolutely loved Buck O'Neill, and I said, and I'm so glad he got into the Hall of Fame. That was a great moment. But so I was in this documentary class, and I'm like, I can't believe I never heard of this team. That was like, lived in Central PA my whole life, and I never heard of the Harrisburg Giants. And I was like, wow, if I've never heard of it, how many other people haven't heard of it? So I'm like, this story has to be told. And so and one thing led to another. I interviewed Jim Whedon, and then interviewed Leo Syke Burnett, and the other players and stuff that were still living at the time. And then of course I met Ted Noor, and I met Caleb Jackson, and they know, so they're a wellspring of knowledge. As you've had Ted on your show. Yeah, he's a wellspring of knowledge whenever it comes to baseball history. And his knowledge on the Giants has been invaluable, and it's invaluable now with the Rap film, because he's like,
I bet
much about Rap Dixon.
He is the Rap Dixon. He's the Rap Dixon expert. Like, absolutely, yeah.
He has a presentation, and I saw he gave it to you on your show.
He's fantastic. Yeah, that was so much fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I've interviewed him 3 times for the Rap Dixon documentary. So
cool.
What he brings to the table with his knowledge has been invaluable. But so I met all these people, that were involved, and I just got interested in it because it was like, it's a story that's not told, and it's they were kept down through segregation, racism, and in the case of someone like Rap Dixon. So he had that going against him, the fact that he couldn't play in the major leagues because of his skin color, but then it's also the fact that he died young. He died when he was 42 years old. So he wasn't around to talk about himself when Negro League players started to go into Hall of Fame in the 70s, and they started gaining momentum, like the Robert Peterson, and Only the Ball Was White, and that kind of thing. So Rap story. So with the, and I don't talk about the Rap film, but I'll get back to the Giants film. But it's like, with the Rap story, his story has been his story is the story of all players, I feel, in a way, because there are so many that deserve to be recognized in the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
And they're not, because they died before baseball was integrated, or they just were forgotten along the way, or didn't something happened where they were lost. So when you die before baseball integrates, the people who are still there's a tendency to focus on the people who are still living, and the people that have like long passed away. Spotswood Poles is another example of, I'm sure Ted or mentioned him to you.
Mhm.
Spots with Poles is another example. Somebody who is, should be in the Baseball Hall of Fame, fantastic in every regard, but has been basically kind of, forgotten because of that. It's just, and I saw that happening again, whether it's John Donaldson or it's, who I
Mhm.
know had a big push to get in, and, he deserves to be in. There's so many that are just like rap in a way. And it's like, I found that, and I know that they have a committee now called 42 for 21, and I want to champion
Mhm.
that because that is, and I know Ted and Sean Gibson does that, and tremendous people. So I don't know if Ted's given that stat, but it was like, what is it like? So before integration, 17% of the Hall of Fame is black or something, or like it's
Mhm.
and then after integration, it's like 43 or 44% or something is black. So it's like, and you're at 17, it's like if after integration happens and the Hall of Fame is almost like 50% black, and before integration it's 17% or something. It's like, okay, something's wrong here, we need to
Right.
bring
The
that
math,
number
the
up.
math doesn't add up.
Yeah, because it's like, what's going on? I mean, there's people playing professional, major league caliber baseball, like, in the Negro leagues, and we need to give these people their long overdue recognition, and it's a
Mhm.
cause that I believe in, and that
Me too.
needs to happen, and that's the big push for the film that I'm making with Rap, and it was a big push for the Giants film too.
Mhm.
People recognize.
The it's funny you mentioned about Messiah now being a university, but Cabrini University, I'm sure you're familiar with, right? Which
I've
is
heard
not
of them. Yeah, yeah.
too far from you. They're down, I believe, in the Philadelphia area. But I had on Professor Courtney Smith, who's written several books on Philly baseball history that I could send you some information. You could get together with her. She was fantastic. She's got, I think she is, and you know who Don Rogerson is? He wrote, Invisible Men, which you mentioned. Only the Ball Was White. Invisible Men is another one of those early books from the
Oh,
70s.
yeah.
But
Okay.
he did a documentary. Have you seen it? The Sun Is Always Shining Somewhere on the Negro Leagues. Have you seen it? Google it if you haven't. But
I've
it's from
heard
like
of it.
19. It's
I'm
from
not.
like 1981. It's from like 1981. So he wrote his book Invisible Men, I think, just before that. And as part of this, The Sun Is Always Shining, he had a lot of recordings with some of the greats. Many of them at that time were still alive, right? Which was the beauty of being able to interview these guys. Same thing with Phil Dixon, has
Oh, I love
hundreds of interviews. You're right. He's got hundreds. They're national treasures. Some of the things that these guys have that
He's
they
done
that they
everything.
have.
I met
But
Phil
they,
in the city. He was a what a gentleman. He
oh
came
yeah, and it's
for my film and stuff, and he was in a Town Teams. It was like a Town Teams baseball documentary that he was in, and which was
oh,
really
the things
good.
I
And
could have talked to him until the sun came up. The stories that he had, it was just fantastic. Yeah, they were a lot of fun.
yeah, he's got everything. Yeah, I mean, his
So Don
photographic
Rogerson.
history that he has. I have it over here, where it's like his photographic history of the Negro Leagues has
Mhm.
has so much about rap in it, and I was like, oh.
Right?
Yeah, and he always says, it's funny. He's always said, well, I love that name, because he has the same name, Dixon. It's like, but
Yeah,
he said that
right.
I guess he said he's not related, but he knew Paul Dixon. He told me he knew Paul Dixon, who was Rap's brother, who also played in the Negro
And
Leagues.
also played, yeah.
And
And Rap was Herb. For anybody who isn't aware of that, Herb was his
yes,
first name. Really, yes.
yeah, Herbert Rap Dixon.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what they put. Yes, they put Rap in quotes or something. But Herbert Dixon was, and I asked more, and that's going to be in the film too. It's like, so I asked people like where Rap got his nickname, because
Mhm.
like,
So where did he get his nickname?
yeah,
I
right.
wondered.
Now
I
I
imagine he
myself up for that
rapped the
question.
ball pretty hard.
Yeah, yeah. But so I was asking, how did Herbert Dixon get the nickname Rap? And they're like, Well, and I heard different things from different people, and it's like Leo Syke Burnett, who played for the Giants and was personal friends with Rap Dixon and Steelton, and Rap had coached him at the Harrisburg Giants, and he told me, he said, everybody just called him Rap. He said he asked Paul why they called him Rap, and he's like, well, even Paul called him Rap, and he couldn't say why, and so it was this. Now Ted Norr has an answer, and Ted Norr said that it was because of somebody, a sports writer, when he was playing for the Keystone Giants, I think, gave him the Ches Washington. That's it. Ches Washington gave him the first name Rap because of the wrapping of the ball. When
right,
it's like a the
like
sound.
Bajoon.
It was
like Judd Wilson, Bujum Wilson, right? They all had nicknames like that.
Yeah, I love that. And then also, so India Garnett, who is Rap Dixon's niece, told me that it's from the Rappahannock River.
Ah, that would make sense too, right?
I was like, okay, that's what she thinks it was from. And I was like,
that makes sense. He's from Virginia.
Well,
right?
It's from Georgia, actually.
Georgia.
Yeah.
So the Rappahannock, does it go down as far as Georgia, though? Maybe it does.
I don't know. I'll have to look at a map. But
the Rappahannock's in Virginia. But
yeah, I know the Rappahannock. And that's why I was kind of well, how did that happen? Because I knew he was born in Kingston, Georgia, and his family moved there in the Great Migration time to PA. And from my understanding, he was talking to his family. It had to do with the steel mill, and it had to do with the church there. That that one of his relatives was a minister for First Baptist in Steelton.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was a combination of those things. But so I didn't know if maybe the migration, they traveled along the Rappahannock or something, and he got from that, or I don't know. So there's all these different, so it's kind of like Citizen Kane in that way, like Rosebud, all these disparaging pieces, and what makes this guy who, the stories that, they all kind of fit into, what is it? But yeah, so it's interesting. I really am fascinated to know which one it really is, but I don't know. I like the fact that it's kind of open-ended in a way too, because it gives you something to talk about, and it gives you something, so.
That's right. So when is the film is not, when is it going to be released?
Well, so that's a good question. What I'm aiming for now is probably, because how there's windows with festivals,
right.
So,
I mentioned the one in Austin.
Yeah. So they all are like that. They all have a very specific period when they are accepting, and there's certain ones that it's they have to be the premiering festival. If you submit to Sundance, it has to be a premiere there. So it's if you're planning on Sundance being part of your strategy, you need to you need to submit to them, and make sure that they're the premiering festival. Now, not all of them do that or whatnot, but there are certain festivals that do that. So you need to keep that in mind. And so I'm aiming for possibly spring of next year, maybe.
Okay.
So spring of 2023 or early 2024 for the
window. And when did you start?
Pretty much right after There Were Giants.
Okay. And you said that came out in 2016? Yeah.
I'm trying to remember if it was that year that I started, or if it was the year prior. I know for a fact the year prior I was working on it. So yeah, it's been some time. The pandemic has been very difficult in dealing with, try to get to people with interviews, and that's really hampered me. Unfortunately, I've been doing a lot of editing, by myself, because I'd be at my, but whenever it comes to actually interviewing people in person, I've had to really be careful and to it's kind of limited me in that regard. So, but I'm almost done with my interviews. So
good. How many interviews?
How many interviews are there?
You said you did now, like for example, Ted multiple times, Ted Moore. But
right.
How many different people were interviewed for this?
I mean, close to like, I think it's like, so far it's been like 10 people, 10, 11 people. Actually, like 11, I think 11 people.
Cool. And so if you started sometime after they were giants, and now we're in 2022, a little bit of pandemic time in there, how much time, because documentary filmmaking is obviously definitely different than making something.
So narrative, it's the shooting aspect is shorter, like, so if you have, it's all about getting the money and getting, and of course documentaries that way too, but it's like, if you have your own equipment, like, and you can just go and interview somebody and they accept an interview, you just go there and interview them or whatever. And you can, get that. Now, travel is expensive. Now, there's all sorts of things that, licensing footage is very expensive with documentaries and things like that. But narrative, it's all about getting the money and getting the, depending on your level, or if you want Hollywood involved, or if you want, if you're going,
right.
It's like, it's all getting to the shoot. It's everything that gets to the shoot. And with documentary, at least to me, it seems like it's everything that's after the shoot.
Right.
That is the money. So it's like, it's kind of interesting in that way. But you could plan out and make a feature film, fictional narrative film for like 5 days of shooting or something. If you have a lower budget film or something like that, you can churn something out. I mean, there's people in micro budget world that have done it.
A lot of research. You do. I mean, you end up having to do a lot of research, a lot of, so you end up, I would imagine, because one of the things that fascinated me, I like to write. Obviously, I like to read. I'm kind of similar to you in a lot of respects. Where I grew up, I always had this fascination with history, and particularly sports history. And then I got into the Negro Leagues right around the same time you're talking about, a little differently. I mean, the Ken Burns came out in what year was that? 93? Somewhere around there?
Because the strike was
94. Okay. So that's right. It came out right around after the strike. So 1992, Reggie Jackson, I was working at the time for the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Red Barons up in Northeast PA in Music, the stadium was. And they had a benefit night for the Negro League Players Association. That they had a home run derby, and then some other old timers came in. I know, like Joe Pepitone was there, and
cool.
Bucky Dent was there. There was a lot of cool players that were former Yankees, some former Phillies. But then there were 18 or 20 Negro Leaguers. Phil Dixon was there, and I didn't know it. I didn't know it at the time. When I interviewed him back in, I think it was April or May last year, we're talking. He's like, "Was that in 1992? Because I was there." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" He was on his way to to do an interview for a radio station. He was going from, I think, Philadelphia up to New York City. Someone mentioned it to him. He stopped in. He was there. I probably met him. But it was a whole weekend long, and I got to hear the stories of these guys, and it just blew me away. And I had to keep finding out more ever since. And so it's similar though. But one of the things that fascinated me about some of these, I mean, so I could probably write and talk my way through describing things, a 500-page novel. I've written, screenplays and other things, but
you've written screenplays, cool.
I have. I'll have to send you the one I did on old baseball history that works in some Negro Leagues. But and I'm working on a couple others, but I haven't finished them yet.
Oh, really?
It's you talk about. One of the things I told you is sometimes you never know who's going to have inspiration on something. I had started a novel that I was working on, but you have a day job and you have kids and things like that. I would write like a few pages a month. It seemed like, right? And so one day I sat down and I said, you know what? I'm going to take a class at the community college, Lone Star College here in Houston area, and see if I can get motivated and organized to try to keep going on this. Because people said, hey, that sounds pretty good. So when I signed up for the class, though, it turned out to be a screenwriting class, for screenplays,
Oh, nice.
not novels. And so the professor talked me into staying in the class. And believe it or not, in the 9 or 10 weeks of that class, I got a screenplay done. So I was pretty, it got me motivated, but I had all this background research. All I had to do was kind of cull it down to a 110-page screenplay, right? So anyways, long story short, one of the things that I found fascinating about these interviews, and I got talked about the difference between films, is like children's books. You have to cull down the life and essence of someone or something into 20, 30 pages of illustrated. And so my question to them was, how do you decide what to put in? So I would imagine for a documentary film, you have a lot of stuff. How do you decide what you keep and what you don't?
Yeah. So it's very different so it's like, and I've had people that write screenplays that do fiction that have come out and they're like, I don't know how you do what you do. You know, like, because they, they already have the script. So they're editing by like the script and like why so they already kind of have a guideline. With docs, we're principally writing it with the editing. Like there's not necessarily screenplays with docs or anything, obviously, because it's nonfiction. So it's like when you're filming, you're dealing with all these different, the footage and interviews and things, and you're creating the film in the editing. It's purely like, you're writing the film like right on that timeline.
Wow. Yeah.
You have to choose it, so it's like choosing. So each person, and if you think of it from a fictional sense, there's characters and stuff. So it's like, each person you interview, they have an area of expertise. They have something they bring to the table that you can utilize for they're that character in your documentary.
Cool.
That. So
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
They all bring something different to the table, and sometimes so you plan for that in advance. You're like, okay, this person's an expert in something in the Negro Leagues or a certain player, a certain team or something. You plan for that in advance, like this is where I'm going to get my information on this or something, like they're going to focus on this. But it turns out they also know about something else, and they also are like extremely passionate and they like have like this, there's like a heart to them and how they tell their story, that you can utilize in an emotional way. There's all sorts of layers and levels that it's interesting whenever you interview people, and you don't really know where it's going to go. You could plan for it. You could say, okay, I got my questions here, and like, I've read the book that they wrote. This and that. But it's like you go there, and with that, it does help. I would recommend that. I found out that Johnny Carson always, before every guest, he would always read every book that whoever, if somebody was an author or anything, so I was like, well, to be a good interviewer, you gotta know like what they've done, but it's like you go into that and then it's like they know so much about something else that you never even thought, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is like,
so you're actually, that's exactly what I kind of was asking, right? Because now you end up with all this information, more than you even thought you ever needed.
Oh yeah,
I know. Now you got to cut it all down, man. Can't be easy, because I'm sure. So are you restricted, or do you restrict yourself to certain length of time, or what usually is the general rule of thumb there if you're going to do a documentary on something?
Well, it's
that's not a Ken Burns documentary.
Well, Ken Burns is another story. I met Ken Burns, by the way. I had dinner with him. I sent him an email. He actually, I blew me away. Yes. Nice. I told him what I was doing, why I was doing it, and he told me get with him before the summer. This was probably in the fall. He said, I'm working on this, and this. Yeah. But maybe we could figure something out. That would like freak me out if Ken Burns ever came on here. But he, within like a couple of hours after I thought I was just sending the email off into space.
I had no idea if he was ever even going to see it, or maybe he didn't. Maybe it was just his assistant. I have no idea. But
Got a
yes,
response.
I got a response, and he was positive about it and said,
"That's great.
Like what you're doing. Let's talk again before the later in the spring, summer." So that would be pretty cool.
It's a very nice man. I should preface how I met him. So he was a guest speaker. He gave a lecture that was like in like the one auditorium at my college. So it was like he was giving a presentation / lecture at the college. Selling tickets to it, everything. Mm-hmm. And I was invited by the president of the college. They were having kind of like a dinner banquet at the president's house for Ken Burns, and because I had made the Giants movie, I made a movie about a Negro League baseball team. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Well, you should come and meet Ken Burns and this and that. So it's like, nice. I came and I met him. I said, I told him about. I was naming off all his films, and because I like almost all of them and stuff. And he was like, "Wow, you made my night" and stuff. I was like so thrilled. I got a chance. Mm-hmm. So they were all for me, and we were working. Because at that time we were trying to get like a really nice edition out, and it had not been released on like physical media yet. And we were like, well, we need to get like, an actual, like, I made a Blu-ray that was especially for him.
Oh, wow. A Blu-ray.
Yeah, I made him a Blu-ray of There Were Giants and gave it to him. And I gave a presentation to him there. They had me go up and like give a presentation to him and everything. It was crazy. I'm like, and I'm seeing him look at me and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Ken Burns.
It's Ken Burns. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And it was like I just couldn't believe it. And but it was a wonderful experience. And
I can only imagine. Yeah. I could only imagine. That had to be a blast. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Probably one of the most articulate people I think I've ever met in my life.
Right.
I mean, I think he could just drop a quote from Frank Lloyd Wright or something, or any of these people that he's made a documentary about, or where they seem to like live inside him. It's like amazing. Like I'm just like,
yeah, definitely a different level for sure. Yeah, but
what a man! So what an experience. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, so he had somebody that had an immense influence on me.
Mm-hmm. I bet. Any other documentary filmmakers that
I have to say I work for him, Kirby
recommend?
Dick. If you've heard, Kirby Dick is a social justice documentary filmmaker. He's the best one there is, and I think, he's done The Invisible War, which was on sexual assault in the military, and after that film was released, so many pieces of legislation were passed to like change the policies and to change. He made one on sexual assault in college campuses called The Hunting Ground. He's made, he's had a number of different subject matters, and he kind of is all about exposing, things. He's very journalistic in that way. And he had one right now, I think, what is it? He's making the one on Mia Farrow and Woody Allen. Yeah, the docu series. Yeah, okay. That's what he's doing right now. On like that, because there's this whole thing like Woody Allen was, doing all bad things. Not again, but so he's an influence on me. Mainly through his passion for causes and for and I view this as kind of like a social justice kind of cause. We're right or wrong, trying to like what I'm doing. We're fighting against racism. We're fighting against segregation and calling into question how we study history and like what we should study with history and stuff. So so he's influenced me a lot, and his attention to detail is tremendous.
Cool.
That he really influenced me a lot. So
cool.
I was an intern for him in Los Angeles, and that was a great experience.
Oh wow, I bet, right? I
Yeah,
bet.
and I worked for I was an intern for Austin Wilkin, who was the archivist for the Marlon Brando estate, and so I worked with him. He's also a producer, so I've worked with him developing some things. So anything that Austin is involved with or whatever, I'm all for, and I'm interested in it. Like, so I don't know if you ever saw the Listen to Me Marlon documentary. It was on Showtime, I think, in
No.
2015. Tremendous film. It really spoke to me because they had all this audio of Marlon Brando, like talking, and he would record himself, and it was just so powerful. It was like Marlon Brando in his own words, kind of thing, because so much has been written about Marlon Brando that has, not necessarily been accurate, or has, how he saw it, or, his side of the story, or like, things like that. So it's very interesting to hear that. I loved it, so I mean, so
awesome.
Yeah, those are some.
To see if I could check it out.
Yeah.
All these things, you look back over years, right? Everything shapes who you are and how you got there. And that's why I think it's important, why I like hearing these kinds of stories, because it always gives you hope. I blew off the dust. I couldn't believe it still worked. I have a CD. Tells you how old my laptop is. It's about 4 or 5 years old. Still has a CD player on it, but
CD-ROM. Nice.
Yeah, CD-ROM. It blew off the dust from the final draft. Was the screenwriting software that I used back in like 2012 when I wrote that screenplay, and I had started several others. And, so I was just writing them in notebooks or in Word or something. And I thought, this isn't going to work. You know what? It did. And so I was able to go back, and do some more work. I want to keep on some of these, because I think that they're just fun. There's so many stories to tell out there. There's so many stories. And like you just said about the Harrisburg team, you said, wow, how come nobody knows? I mean, you're right. Most people don't know those stories. And that's what makes it a lot of fun. Just about every author I've talked to has had that same experience where they're walking down the street. What's that picture? And they'll see like, from like 1930s, like some black and white baseball teams photos in some storefront or in a library. Wow, I never knew that happened here. And so it is all around you, and it's been happening for a long time. I think it's really fun to let people know and to look around, and maybe they get inspired, and maybe they do some things like you do and write or do some research or just learn about it,
Yeah, and it's amazing whenever you put stuff out there and people respond to it, and and you hear people tell you their own story about, like, my grandfather played for the Negro Leagues, and like this, cool. And it's like, oh, like those is like the best mail I ever get, or whatever, is like, hearing those stories.
Well, you could probably do another 1,000 documentaries and still never have done them all. There's so many stories that are out there to be told that they're all amazing. I want to say it was 1975-ish. My dad took me to a stadium Shout Stadium in Dunmore, where the Scranton Red Sox used to play. They were the Class C for the Boston Red Sox back in the 30s and 40s. But the Clowns came and played there. I saw them play. Of course, I didn't know anything at the time. I was probably 8 or 10 years old and had no idea about any of who they were, right? But they were still touring and playing and barnstorming into the 1970s. I think they even went into the 1980s.
Oh wow!
So there are some stories out there that most people probably have had some experience at some point with black baseball, the Negro Leagues, either, like I said, in their town, they came through, there's a player from there or close by. cool stuff. Or your local town team probably played them in a barnstorming game at some point. If you do enough digging, I bet you find it.
Well, the Harrisburg Senators played the Giants all the time. It was called for the city championship.
Ah, no kidding.
Yeah.
KC, Kansas City did that as well. The Blues used to play the Monarchs all the time. I wonder how many other cities did that. Probably a lot.
Yeah.
If Harrisburg is doing, of course, they are the capital. I mean, most people, you want to, how many people are down here in Texas? This tells you, I guess, speaks to the education. I don't want to speak bad about Texas. My kids went to school there. But how many people I know, they don't even know Harrisburg is the capital of Pennsylvania. Like, yeah, it's not Philadelphia, no.
Yeah, right. It's like
Philadelphia used to be the capital of the country. Philadelphia used to be the nation's capital a long, long time ago, but no, it's not the capital of Pennsylvania. It's actually Harrisburg. But yeah,
I run into that too. Anywhere if I travel
crazy,
somewhere or something like that, they're like, "Where's that? Harrisburg?
Where's that?" Yeah.
It was really funny. I was in Los Angeles at the Pantages. We were seeing Cabaret, and their version of it. The one character walks in and he says, they asked him where he's from, and he says Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And I'm sitting there in Los Angeles, I'm the only person in the whole place that's like from there, and he's talking to me. It's supposed to resemble like a place that someone hasn't heard of or something, I guess, in the play or something. And I was like, wow, like he just said Harrisburg.
Right. Well, how about, my brother? My brother's a little bit older than I am. He laughs. We laugh about it all the time, but Joe Biden from Scranton.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, he is from.
I didn't grow up in Scranton. I went to high school there. I grew up in Old Forge. Old Forge. How far are you away from there? From that area?
I live in Mechanicsburg.
So you're only less than an hour and a half, I'm sure. If you want the pizza capital of the world, if you ever get up that way, the pizza capital of the world is Old Forge, Pennsylvania, where I grew up. Google it. I'm not kidding. I'm not making that up. They actually patented that term, pizza capital of the world. But they do have the best pizza on that I've ever eaten, maybe because I grew up eating it. But there's like 15 different pizza places, all Sicilian Square, in this little town of 6,000 or 7,000 people. And I'm telling you, it's worth going up there to check it out. But my brother and I
check that out. I love pizza.
Yeah, well, there you go. It's only an hour away. You can make a road trip up there and have yourself some pizza. If you're ever heading up there, just let me know and I'll tell you where to go. Okay. I'm sure I'll call them and I'm sure they will take care of you.
I will definitely do that.
But because my sister still lives there. My sister is still there. But we laugh about, can you believe the president is from Scranton?
He was there recently too, didn't he? Didn't he give like a speech there or something recently? He went back to Scranton, I think.
Yeah. That's always been the hotbed of politics up in Northeast PA. Anyway, it's so fun stuff. And I really appreciate your time. And we we were winging it here, but I think this was. And I'm not kidding. If you want to make a road trip for the best pizza that I've ever personally had, they just let me know when you're going, and I'll from Mechanicsburg. Yeah, I bet you that's no more than an hour and 15, 20 minutes. Maybe you can get up there.
Oh wow! Wow, I'll have to go there then sometime. Yeah, you said there's like
You know what? It's right at the foot of. If you've ever been to a Red Barons game, or if you know where the stadium is, you can see the stadium from 81, Interstate 81, right?
Oh, I probably
when you come up, there's the Montage. Now it's called Snow Mountain, but there's a ski resort. At the bottom of the mountain is the baseball stadium, and then that exit before the baseball stadium is to go to Old Forge, and the best pizza in the pizza capital of the world.
That's great. That's great. I love pizza.
All right. Keep us posted on what's going on. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate you being a good sport.
Oh yeah, this was a complete blast.
We'll keep in touch. I should be, hopefully by tomorrow afternoon, I should have my Wi-Fi situation all straightened out. I'm winging it on my phone here. So yeah, this was fun. Best of luck on all that, and keep at it, man. There are, like I said, hats off to all you guys who do this kind of stuff, because there are a lot of stories, and if there isn't people telling them, who knows where we would be today if all of the storytellers like the Bob Kendricks and Phil Dixon and Larry Lester, if Ted Noor, Leslie, if they're not telling these stories all these years, because Leslie, it blows me away. I mean, she got into this with Saber and back in like 1985 or 7 or
I know.
And it's like, wow. I mean, if they weren't telling these stories and doing what they were doing, who knows today, if Major League Baseball ever gets around to that announcement. Long overdue. And it's been some really good momentum after that, right?
Yeah, we do have some.
People got to keep it going.
Yeah, we need to get rid of this 10-year thing.
Oh my God. You mentioned that before, and I meant to say something.
That's the main.
I don't know if people realize.
Yeah, every 10 years is when Negro League players are eligible to be elected. It's every 10 years. You have to,
because now it's
just elected. We just elected Buck O'Neil and Bud Fowler, but now we need to wait another 10 years until someone like Rap Dixon or John Donaldson could get in.
No, that's unacceptable. And it's all because they fall into that early baseball, which is pre-1950. Right. So,
that's the most underserved area where we should spend most of our time.
That's right.
Because but it's hard. You got to do research. You have to dig through things. You gotta, and that's where these historians that you're talking about, that's where we come in, people, me making this film and stuff. I mean, this is where we come in, and we need to show these people need to be recognized,
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm with you.
I think there's going to be an effort made to try to change that for the Negro League players. But if it's 10 more years, that's no good. That's not going to work. But
no, and that's going to be featured in the film, because we're going to talk about that that whole process and when that was decided and stuff. The big news, of course, that Negro League stats are now Major League stats. I mean, we call it to the question. I mean, so Rap Dixon had a record 14 consecutive hits. If you have a record of 14 consecutive hits, and that's Major League, that's like a major record that in their records room in the Hall of Fame, that should be there with DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak. I mean, I
kind of could see, their point on early baseball, because you would think over all these years of the Hall of Fame, many of those guys have come through the cycle multiple times. And if they're not in by now, they're not going to get in. However, that may be true of, most players pre-integration. But as far as the Black and Latin players from that time period, no, they don't have those same numbers of cycles that they've gone through to be able to get into the Hall of Fame. So it doesn't work this 10 years. No, it's no good. We need to start a petition that I think somebody probably already has. There's got to be somebody working on that, because it's got to change. But I do, like I said, I appreciate you being a good sport, your time for doing this. This was a lot of fun. I will send you the link to this, and keep us posted on what's going on. I follow you on Twitter. We talked about the importance of trying to, have those people who get you and what you're trying to do. And those are the people that you like hanging with you and following you, because they're going to be supportive. And that's your types of projects. I bet you need some support, right?
Yeah. We need all the support we can get, So I much appreciated. Thank you for having me. It's been a blast.
No problem, man. Thank you for your time.
We can do this again sometime.
All right, man. Sounds good. Keep in touch.
All right. See you.
All right. Bye-bye.